unlocking financial product innovation and design. The rationale behind this needs of the CBN to achieve 80% financial inclusion by the year 2020, which was adjusted to 95% by the year 2023. This was done in 2018. Financial service providers will need to create and deliver products and services to new customer segments who have been unserved or underserved. Serving these new customer segments will require services deeply grounded in their needs, aspirations, and contextual realities. For example, the needs of a trader in Anambra may differ to the needs of a trader in East. SIDFS research investigations in 2019 and in 2020 revealed that financial service providers share homogeneity across their products and services, a phenomenon which is partly responsible for the low adoption of financial services. We essentially need to meet people at points of need. The COVID-19 pandemic had also made not only the history books, but also for the financial services. Is now greater as banking and digital finance solutions for citizens, even as physical distancing protocols are now the norm. There is a need to new financial products and services to meet evolving needs and customers, improve fits, and move the needle forward. This promises to be a conversation with a myriad of stakeholders that make up the financial inclusion space, and that will hopefully help to move the financial inclusion needle forward. So with that, please allow me to welcome Professor Enodo, who works at Lagos Business School, who will give the welcome address and opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would welcome everyone to the 20 International Financial Inclusion Conference. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining in this morning. I'm especially delighted at the theme of this year's conference, which is on financial product innovation through customer-centered design. And as Lele has just mentioned, this is geared towards the actualization of the Central Bank of Nigeria's mandate for 80% by 2020, which is this year, 95% by 2023. Of course, over the last few years, we have seen what I would say as rapid innovation in the global financial services industry that's geared towards leaving no one behind. However, in Africa, I feel that we still need to do more in terms of coming up with innovative services that are geared towards this objective. Increasingly, we see a disruption of this model by digital technology. This has been further exacerbated by the change in consumer behavior that's been brought by the COVID and source the re-innovation of key practices. If customer product development practices are implemented in the pursuit of product market space. Every year, is that to help financial service providers tackle their challenges in an increasingly volatile, uncertain, and bigger ecosystem. This year, the conference focuses on product development that was helping to improve the customer base as well as retention. And I believe that during the course of the day, we will be exploring the ways in which digital can unlock innovation in the digital finance ecosystem. Members of the Sustainable and Inclusive Digital Financial Services team, led by Professor David West, doing an impressive work in modernization and educating public. And indeed, the discussions often serve as, if you like, a thinking pad for the providers to give them an insight into what more they could be doing. So once again, I would like to welcome you to the 2020 International Financial Inclusion Conference. you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Nase Okeno of Lagos Business School for lovely welcome address. Thank you for setting the tone of what is going to be an amazing conference and great insight conversations on financial inclusion. Please allow me to welcome our speaker, who the keynote speech is delivered by Mohammed Asmal Huda, who is the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Bcash Limited. Bcash is in 2018, Bcash was a large provider of mobile financial services in Bangladesh, a country where about 63% of adults live in rural areas. Always great to hear from another country that has been able to tackle the financial inclusion issue. So welcome Mr. Mohammed Asmal Huda, who is the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Bcash Limited. We invite you, sir, to please come and give the keynote. Thank you.
Hope everyone can hear me out. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really delighted. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to be here. And on behalf of Bikash and on behalf of the organization, I really want to share greetings with everyone here. And we hope it will bring deserved success through our discussion. So that I want to share with you.
Go ahead, we can hear you. Yeah.
So you can see the screen, right?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Let me just first give a brief about Bikash. Bikash, as you mentioned, is the largest mobile financial service provider in Bangladesh. We have started the operation in 2011. So it has been close to it has been more than 10 years that we are in the operation so far. The genesis was financial inclusion. So it came through a pragmatic vision from the Central Bank of Bangladesh, who regulates the financial. So it was their focus that financial inclusion, and through that, because of the license and operation in the market. So if you look at the enabler, I believe we saw 65% mobile penetration and 20% banking penetration back in 2010, and that people carry mobile phone, but able to financial experience. Notion, I get function and what are the major marks that could achieve in the last 10 years? Today we have 50 million registered customers in Bangladesh. And you know about the population, it is we have roughly 170 million in the country. So 50 million is a good number, but of course, you know, we can grow even more on that. Every month, we can see 22 million customers. So that is giving the number 2 million monthly active users. Every day we are having 2 million more financial. In terms of volume, USD 125 million opportunity in our currency, but in USD, for your understanding, I put it like 125 million. We have 225K plus distribution network. These are the agents who are working on behalf of Vikas, and they are covering the whole geography, and they are providing service to the last mile customer. We have close to 200,000 merchants who are engaged with Vikas, and they are receiving payments from customers. The annual turnover in 2019 was 300 million. And the last point is all about a different success. Fortune magazine's Change the World list, they have recognized Vikas one of the list of 50 in our locality. We have been awarded for our brand that has become the best brand in 2019, and the employer of 2019. So all these milestones we achieve throughout the journey. So now let me take you more about how we have devised our services. So as you know that mobile wallet itself uh, is not good enough to create the right level of attraction among people. Even in our country, where most of the people are living very close to the poverty line, and we have that differences. Is quite good, but up to mark. The smartphone penetration is yet to reach a level that, but still a long way to go. The formal literacy is not that big. I mean, close to 50% people, but I believe if we put all together, the people are very, I would say, interested and very much triggered by technology. And Bangladesh Bank, being a regulator, when they have come up with the regulatory guideline and a very clear mandate, it gave us the boost that, okay, let us bring out the services so that we can attract people and we can keep them active on the service. So particularly the underprivileged or unprivileged people, that is our primary target. That has been our primary target. The proposition that you can bring money in without the funding. You can do it through your agent. You can bring money from your card. You can bring money from bank account. You can receive government disbursement or NGO disbursement. You can receive your salary and you receive international remittance if somebody is sending it from outside. So that's the funding side. If I go to the spending side, of course, that is more interesting. People can take money out from agents. They can pay to merchants. They can pay their education fee. They can send money to friends and family. They can recharge their mobile phone. They can participate in online payment. They can pay their utility bills, and so on and so forth. Many are coming and getting cash in our system over the time, so that people are not using Bika only as a channel to get money and take out, rather digital transaction ecosystem, so that we are trying to bring all relevant spending options. Now, let me talk about how we are looking at the problems. So we are talking about unlocking financial product innovation to customer-centric product. So the first, as per our understanding, is to understand the market, to understand the customer, to understand their pain points, and then so that we are not following the technology capacity. initiative. Rather, we are more concentrating into what is the real thing that is required by our customer. What is the problem we are looking into? What is the solution we are thinking about? So this is an example on the screen we're looking at. When we were thinking about the payment, so we tried to figure out what is the payment domain. So in terms of payment frequency, how can we see the ecosystem, or how can we see the options? And in terms of difficulty, in terms of customer pain, in terms of customer, we go for difficult options, like the more difficult problem solved, it will bring more comfort to the customer. That is the consumer centricity. But on the other side, if you look at the business side, more and more frequency the customer active, and probably it will be a good for business also. So if you look at the size of each and every bubble here and the color, and we try to figure out what we should be in the first year, and in the second year, and the third year. And the bubble size is telling you what is the ultimate size, the potential of that service. So now, based on market dynamics, based on the technology capacity, based on the regulatory support, we have to choose like what should come first and what should come second, what should come. We always think about our product lineup. When we are decided with the product, like this is XYZ product lineup that we should look into, the next step is what is the business problem that we want to solve? And subsequently, what is the human solution that we are thinking about? For example, I'm just putting one line. How can we use product penetration? So that is a fundamental business problem. But when we are translating it into a human solution, we should think about the easiest way that will help users to figure out whether our product fits into their needs and encourage them to buy it or to use it. So this translation again gives us another layer of analysis or analytical sense. Okay, while we are solving some of the business issues, are we thinking from the human perspective? We put ourselves in the shoes of a customer. What will give me sufficient reason or purpose that why I should be using that product of the company? And now when we're thinking about the problem domain and the solution domain more into the product and technology space, we don't really jump into the technology first. Start thinking about the problem itself, the real problem itself. For example, if you think about the utility bill payment, actually it has been a real problem here in our community. Still are bound to banking terminals or counters, and they are standing in the line for more than hours, and they are having a physical copy. If it's lost, then it is another challenge for them. And when he is submitting to a bank counter and giving money, there is no real-time confirmation. So you will have to wait for another 1, 2, or 3 days, and maybe after SMS confirmation, and then based on a seal on that paper, he will have proof that okay, I have a utility bill. Later on, there's no way he can reconcile. In case of any issue, there are bureaucratic arrangements which potentially may eat up a lot of energy and time for him. So when taking this problem into our solution domain, we make sure that we are bringing sufficient technological interventions so that we can save his time, we can save his cost, we can make sure that he is secured with the payment. We are making sure the settlement is taking place immediately, in almost in real time. And if there is any dispute, that is being addressed within a committed timeline. And finally, is ready to use it with all means, 24/7 services that will give him need to out, particularly in this pandemic situation, and he or she can pay the bill sitting at home. On top of that, we are bringing a lot of kind of incentives, different kind of offers, so that we can make the service popular initially. So these problem analysis and then subsequent domain solution domain analysis together, how we do that, that of human-centric design. We are first of all, that means we are putting ourselves in the shoe and have a customer to really understand what is the problem, and then defining the problem in a way that how we can solve it out. Probably we are not ready to cover 100% of the problem, but probably 90%. And then if it is 90%, then we can deliver in the month, in the first month or the first quarter, and then the next quarter we should target that additional 10% that is missing, and then subsequently, then the ideation is coming, like, but involving all relevant people, not only from technology but also from product, from business perspective, marketeers. We have a strong research team here. All of them are sitting together and they're bringing all the ideas, what can be done on pen and paper, not on technology. And once the pen and paper thing is done, we are ready with 4 or 5 different kind of model. Then we are going for prototyping, and we are bringing out a kind of clickable UX design, and then subsequently a very lightweight application just to make sure that it is giving the right essence, that what should be input, what should be output, and where giving the right comfort to the customer. Putting or semi-urban or rural, and giving them different options, screens with the devices, and we want them to work on that or play with all those. While they are playing, their verbal communication, their facial expression, their different written communication, everything is being captured. And then we're coming back on the table, we are putting down all these collected information, and then finally we are figuring out, combining all the feedback from different people, different segment, people from different segment, that what should be our right model for the product. And then we are creating the product, and we are moving it towards launching it in the market. And even after launching it, we are not stopping ourselves. We are going back again to the market, and we are sitting in front of our data analytics, whether we are seeing the right level of penetration, whether they are facing any problem that was overlooked before. Centric journey, that beginning of ideation to the operational. Now, in the center of all these activities, it's all about user experience. So they're coming from the business side, or we're coming from the design product side, or we're thinking about people, or we're bringing the technology. We are actually making sure that right user experience is there. We are leaving him with a very happy expression, so that he not only will continue using our service, but also he can work as a champion on behalf of our service, and he can bring a lot more happy stories in his community through social networking or from his interactions. So now, if I come back to the bigger story, as I mentioned earlier, the problem identification is a very important part. It's all about what customers are talking about, what is their pain point, and it's all about, it gives us the sense of the product vision, and we can outline it with the customer pain point based on that. And then we start working closely, and the product development is done, and then we can go for the release. Now there's some real examples, if I may bring here. So on the screen, you can see this is the screen of our mobile application. We have roughly 18 million customers who have downloaded that, registered that. Every month, more than 6 million people are doing financial transaction using this mobile application. And you know the benefit. When they're using mobile application, you can really detect a lot of his behavioral patterns. You can collect all the and you can put it in your analytics so that you can think about what should be the next step of kind of offer will trigger him, where actually he's located, and so on and so forth. So many things you can actually collect, you can capture, and machine can tell you like what should be which that we should offer to the customer. So if you look at this app model itself, there were certain consumer-centric uh, uh, ideas and solutions that we have applied there, and it came through many iterations of prototyping and market visit. For example, the balance sheet, it was something different, but it came from a customer demand that I need to check my balance. There should be a very easy way how I can get it. And again, I don't want to demonstrate that to everybody who are standing beside me, and they don't need to sneak into my screen and see my balance. So that tap balance option is there. Like you can tap it, it will appear for only a couple of seconds, it will disappear again. So it's you who can see that. The personalized QR behind the picture, so you can, click or tap the picture, it will give you the personal QR, and the person can give you money or pay you using that QR code. At the bottom, is a very generalized QR reader. So you can tap there and you can read any QR, whether it belongs to an agent or any merchant or any other person. So you don't need to go by service. You can just tap it and those things will be decided by the app. App will take you to the right place. If you screen, the basic and most popular services are sitting on the top. That gives you always a comfort that, okay, exactly where are my services. And the next layer of services that bring values to you are, which are probably not relevant to everybody, but may bring some values. Standing, bringing all very relevant services for you. For example, if you go by the example, the first thing, the Jamal car, he's my driver. So I often send him money. So his name and this logo is always standing on the front so that I go by one thing that I can send money to him and I'm doing the value and that's done. So it is bringing an impression that I am using bKash, but it is my bKash actually. So my bKash is, these are the services that is comprised my bKash, and very quickly I can avail any of the services. And then look at the picture where the lady is standing with one offer. It is in local language, but I can explain, like it is like you are ready to get 20% discount if you pay by bKash in a particular shop. That is the best offer, which is probably relevant for me right now, because that merchant shop is very much close to my house. I often go there, things, and it is very localized. So another person probably sitting beside me, he's getting a offer right now. And then in the suggestion part, the app itself through the AI intervention is bringing all relevant services, but probably now. For example, the Carnival is the ISP in my area, but I'm actually using it. But technology or artificial intelligence embedded technology is detecting that I'm living in a place where most of the people are using Carnival and they are happy with the service. So it is suggesting, hey, why don't you use or why don't you try Carnival? So it is going in two directions. First of all, as a customer, I'm being satisfied that, okay, I'm getting a lot of suggestions, which is kind of customized for me. And partners, they're also happy that because she's bringing them in customers' close fingertips, that if customer chooses, yeah, they're getting another customer Bikash. So behind the scene, we are making it very customized for each and every customer. His geographical, his use pattern, his financial ability, his spending pattern, or he is interacting with a lot of similar customer, and analyzing this customer data, we can define him or her that, okay, maybe this offer is valid for his friend or his close relative. Maybe okay, because one option that it's only a matter of 4 to 5 days. It won't take long time. Rather, you hit and what the all the you know pin digits there, and you can uh, different challenges through is market. In my discussion, utility has been big challenge in our community, and we were trying to our customers understand the value of the digital document or fundamental difference mindset that value the physical paper number, the month of bill for which paying, the amount this month, the amount, a lot of other information. So in the digital space, we wanted to make it very clear. So we are actually the app is requesting for only 2-3 information, like okay, which month you are trying to pay the bill, what is the number, and then the PIN number. Then it should be done. But in that transformation, we had to take customer through many iteration of training. Even in our app, we put an image of a physical copy, just to make him understand that this is the account number you need to choose, or this is the amount you should think about, or this is the bill number and the bill month that you should pick from your app. So this kind of training in digital training is available for automated service. And when somebody is paying, whether he is saving money or he is paying a utility bill, we try to make it very easy. For example, when someone is paying another person, we didn't want to take through a lot of difficulties or a lot of jargons. It's more about how to bring ease for customer. So you give the amount that you are trying to see, you give your PIN number, then in one screen, I'm showing you like you have chosen this customer, this is the amount you are trying to send, and after sending, you will have this balance. So very, I would say, natural way of looking at my transaction. And after confirming these, I'm asking him to not click or very single clickable item. Rather, he should tap and hold the button so that it's not a mistake. So he's very consciously is tapping and holding it for 2 seconds or 3 seconds. That gives him the confidence that, okay, I know exactly what I'm doing. It's not a matter of tapping and moving out. So that brought a lot of comfort in our community, and a lot of customers appreciated that this tap and hold mechanism. But it came completely from our human-centric analytical behavior. And always what we want to do, we try to know what users need before they do. So we we are always in the process of analyzing data. For example, even after providing all these options, we can still see a good number of failures in the market. People are trying, but they're getting failed. Then we are trying to understand why these customers are getting failed. Something, whether we can do something for him, whether it's a technical intervention, or we can call the customer just to make sure that he's understanding how it should be paid. So we take all these actions behind. So before customer actually is demanding anything, probably he's not detecting his problem. He's a bit lost, like, hey, I don't know what is happening. I cannot pay or I cannot send money. We're trying to take or capture each and data, and we're trying to figure out how can we help the customer from our side. And that continuous user education, as I mentioned, like even in our app, whatever bringing new release almost every month, and we are trying to bring new features, new services and products. And every time we are bringing a product, we are making sure that the education is going along with that, so people can go to our videos within sitting inside the app. They can really learn how a new service he can avail, what kind of value he can bring, and what is the UX, so that he understand the values and he can start participating there. In summary, I want to echo with the of this discussion and the spirit of this conference, that in this digital environment, of course, people are becoming more demanding and they are becoming very techno-savvy over the time, that applying human-centered design is pretty much mandatory in order to gain their trust quickly. And of course, we want them to remain loyal, and that ultimately can bring the overall brand recognition in the digital communication. So thank you very much. And sincerely, if there is any question, I'm ready to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed Al-Mahouda, the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Bcash. Thank you so much for your presentation. And essentially, you focus on the fact that if you have a data approach, a customer-focused approach, they are and the products that they need. It's always great to hear about what other countries and other companies in different countries are doing. So thank you so very much for that very thought-provoking conversation. Without any further ado, allow me to introduce Dr. Kem Iheanacha, who will provide the highlights of 2020 State of Market Reports report launch. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for that very introduction. Distinguished gentlemen, thank you once more for attending this historic conference, marking a very important milestone in the history of the Sustainable and Inclusive Digital Financial Services Initiative. I'm here to present to you highlights of the 2020 State of Market Report. The boss of the value proposition to the unbanked which I believe you all should take out time to study in great detail, which is specific to challenges and difficulties SPs encounter developing the right types of value propositions for unbanked and underbanked consumers. Essentially, we focus on three demographics: the women, the youth, and the sections of this very exciting report are broken into consumer insights, supply side insights, and policy insights. Now, let's take a look at what is in the consumer insights section. The financially excluded demographic groups in Nigeria include the rural dwellers, the women, and the youth. Let's first of all look at the total adult population. The total adult population, according to data according to EFINA and EFINA's 2018 survey, show that 14.6 million adult Nigerians are underbanked, while 36.6 million adult Nigerians are unbanked, bringing up a whooping sum of about 51.2 million adult Nigerians that are underbanked and insufficient or zero access to financial services. Now, let's sort of break down these numbers and see how they speak to our focus segments. The rural dwellers have about 10.1 million underbanked, 28.8 million, which is by far the largest segment unbanked. Women have about 8.3 million unbanked and 8.3 million underbanked and 20.5 million unbanked, while the youth have 7.1 million underbanked and 20.3 million unbanked. Now, what are some product development opportunities for each of these segments? Now, let's look at the first segment, the unbanked rural dwellers. The unbanked rural dwellers, which include the women and youth. Now, this segment requires tailored savings products as well as microloans. Now, let's take another look at the underbanked rural dwellers, women and youth. This group requires tailored savings products, individual and group insurance options, agri-based investments, collective investment schemes, merchant acceptance, asset and business insurance. Underbanked youth have product development opportunities in the area of digital payments, savings, microloans, mutual funds, and financial education. The underbanked and unbanked women present opportunities in the area of women empowerment schemes, financial and digital literacy, points, services, crop and community health insurance schemes, and micro pension products. Let's now look at some insights from the supply side, which, by the way, include the suppliers and the creators of financial services in Nigeria. Now, the standard product development process, which suppliers are typically expected to follow, start from concept. Now, what happens at the concept stage? At the concept stage, is expected to conceptualize and articulate and be very clear in their minds as to what the value proposition is, who they are serving, and how they actually want to deliver this product. At the research and market exploration stage, they're expected to size the segments, understand the priorities of these segments, and then tailor the solutions to the needs of these segments. At the business analysis stage, they are now expected to carry out and develop a business case for the product or solution. What's the business case? Purchased. At the product development stage, that's where the design of the value proposition now happens. And then last but not the least is the product launch stage, which includes all the activities around the product skills. Now, what were some of our findings when we engaged with FSPs and probed to actually find out to what extent they followed this process I have just highlighted? Now, at the concept and ideation stage, we observed that there was significant lack of concept testing. So while these concepts existed, these concepts were clearly tested and clearly established. There was also a lack of defined coordination for idea generation, idea filtering, and idea execution. There are limited use of techniques and tools for concept generation. So like human-centered design, which was spoken about by Muhammad, the first keynote, were observed to be in very short use or short supply. Now, less dependence on field data. So there also was significant less dependence on field data and more dependence on gut feeling or, hindsight, as the case may be. Now, at the research and market exploration stage, there was also lack of prioritization of market exploration. And, this subsequently leads to low levels of involvement in market size estimation, prioritization of segments, sizing of segments, and difficulty in estimating product growth potential. At the business analysis stage, FSPs were observed to significantly spend a lot of time in risk management. However, it was observed that very little use was made of business cases that establish the profitability or otherwise of product. Now, insights section of the exciting report. Now, the policy insight section speaks to policies and regulatory measures impacting inclusive product development and product delivery. Now, when we did the ranking and we carried out a survey of policies, legislations, regulatory measures, and instruments that drive and promote product development. What the users highlight as most critical to them included cashless policy, tiered KYC, regulations. So these two sort of stood out as the most critical. Now, in the following order of priority, BVN initiative, the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, agent banking regulation, microinsurance, TACAFL, and bank assurance, all of these ranked next. And then this was followed closely by mobile money operators guidelines, guide to charges, national identity concept intervention. While the policies, legislations, and regulations that inhibited inclusive product development included customer onboarding policies. So this was observed to be a significant inhibitor and block to inclusive product development. Finance Act, poor infrastructure, absence of electricity and good roads, competition, inability to fully leverage on telco data, pricing regulation, inadequate attention or framework for microfinance institutions, and then road charges by state governments. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm just here to give you a sneak peek into this very exciting report. I believe that by the time you actually spend a lot more time and sift through all of the detail in this report, you will be a lot more informed on some of these tips and insights. Gentlemen, it's my honor to call on now to launch this very exciting report, Professor Lainka David West, who is the Academic Director of Lagos Business School and lead of the Sustainable and Inclusive Digital Finance Services Initiative. Prof, the floor is yours.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I really hope that you are enjoying. For me, on a personal level, I'm definitely learning a lot, and I'm looking forward to what's going to be a chats briefly, and also two amazing panels that feature a myriad of financial inclusion stakeholders. As we know, it takes a lot of different stakeholders to reach the financial inclusion goal. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce the next segment of this program, which is going to be a fireside chat, a conversation with Uwa Uzebu, Director, Product Development, Innovation, Global Acceptance Solutions at MasterCard. And our moderator for this session will be Professor Olayinka David West, Academic Director and Professor of Information Systems at Lagos Business School. Over to you, Professor.
Thanks, Lily. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much once again for joining us in this conversation where we're talking about unlocking financial product innovation through customer-centered design. And I know that from Mohammed's keynote, one of the things customer trust, and we also need to enhance and build loyalty. I think human-centered design is one of those mechanisms that helps us bridge the gap. So today is 2020, right? 80% we're not there yet, but moving to 95%. But then again, the pandemic has also exposed some of our fragilities and also created a higher demand of why we need to be doing what we're doing regarding financial inclusion. So we've seen this issue of pandemic economics that has continued to ravage all aspects of industry and society. And in this session, we want to understand what it really means and how we can create better customer-centric design options that will move the needle. We started the fireside chats in 2019, and we started because we wanted to have more than an in-depth conversation looking at some of the thematic issues. And last year, we looked at non-consumption in financial products and services, and I think the 3 A's: affordability, availability, and acceptability. This year, we're taking it theme to our conference topic, which is product design. And with me today, joining me today is my good friend, Uwa Zebu, who was in MasterCard Nigeria and then has now gone on to MasterCard Global in New York. Welcome, Uwa.
Thank you, Professor West. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great, it's good to have you here. So I'll just get right into the conversation. And you started out in Nigeria in acceptance development, and now you've gone into global product development and innovation. Can you just take us through your journey and your trajectory in how from getting from acceptance development all the way to global product innovation?
Yeah, thanks for that. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello?
Dr. Wu, we can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Professor West. I think for me, it's been quite a privilege. So, started out, doing consulting, around financial services, just when the whole notion of financial inclusion really began to take hold in Nigeria. And I think that really gave me the opportunity to sort of begin to think about product development, but, initially I started out on the business side, trying to identify opportunities and then working with, a myriad of stakeholders from, microfinancial institutions to, financial sector development agencies and so on. And then, having worked on the consulting side for a while, I decided to test my hands in actually getting into the business of driving some of these initiatives, taking it beyond design to actually execution. So got into, helping to set up one of the mobile money services in Nigeria. And I think that work sort of led me into MasterCard, so like you said, started out in MasterCard doing, business development, but really focusing on acceptance, which is MasterCard's effort to sort of catalyze cash displacement. So did acceptance, but focused on really four key areas. The first was around, segments. So looking at more of the micro enterprises as opposed to the big, businesses that traditionally, when you think about acceptance, those are the kind of businesses you think about. So focused on micro enterprises. And then the second pillar of what I did initially was around innovative technologies. So, when you want to serve micro enterprises, then you need to move from traditional technologies like POS, etc., to, stuff that is more accessible, so mobile and all that. And then also looked at a new set of partners, that we could work with beyond traditional banks, and then new commercial models. And then, did that for a while, first in West Africa and then in Sub-Saharan Africa. But then, based on my own interest to say, okay, I haven't developed, the business acumen. The next logical step for me, based on my own trajectory, was, to get a little bit deeper into product design, product development, product management. So I sort of pivoted to look after product management initially for Middle East and Africa region, focusing on, QR-based solutions. And then, got the opportunity to take that work now globally to now focus on product development specifically and innovation, but still around micro enterprises and low cost point of interaction, which has always been my passion. So that's, been my journey, and, it's been quite the experience, and, something that has been fulfilling as well.
So Nigeria and Africa are basically different markets than MasterCard, a company like MasterCard is used to. So can you share with us, how has MasterCard sort of learned to bridge the insights gap?
I think that's a very pertinent question, Professor West, because, so MasterCard has this philosophy, called global, which is about, having a global mindset, but being very local in execution, right? And so, for us, when we think about product design, we believe that, that local insight, that knowledge of the marketplace is super critical, which is what has given people like me that opportunity, because, and I think it speaks to the entire theme of this conference and this fireside chat as well, which is, really getting into the mind of the customer, and being very empathetic regarding what their wants are. And so from a MasterCard perspective, I think there are three things we really try to emphasize when we look at bridging this kind of gaps, particularly from a product development and innovation standpoint. The first is around our mindset, right? When it comes to bridging gaps and creating products and services that are relevant for markets, you want to have the right mindset in terms of what you are going into. So, for example, you want to understand the dynamics between product-based thinking and platform-based thinking. You want to have an understanding about, desirability, feasibility, and viability. You also want to be able to validate your assumptions, right? Sometimes you have these hunches, but it's super important to be able to validate them with the right kind of stakeholders. And then, you want to think about, partnerships, because, it's important to have those insights, but sometimes you cannot do everything by yourself. So you want to be able to identify the right kind of, partners. And then you also want to have a clear philosophy around, do you want to get things done, or do you want things to be perfect? And then, sometimes also, even as we talk about product-centered design, we also need to realize that sometimes customers don't know what they want as well. So being able to anticipate and be ahead of the curve is also super important. There's this famous saying by, I think it was Henry Ford, that said if he had asked his customer what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So, there's that, I'm thinking as well. So for us, the first point is really about having that mindset Once you have the mindset, the second pillar for us in attempting to bridge this product development and innovation gap is also then the methodology. It's good when we talk about innovation and being able to really have a customer-centered design, but from our experience, certainly it's better to have this kind of innovation processes fully institutionalized so that it doesn't necessarily rely on UA being there or someone else being there. You want to create a culture of innovation and constantly being customer-centered. So processes, are super important in achieving that. And then the final step for us is about management, right? You want to have the kind of processes and systems in place where you are on an ongoing basis able to track the performance of products that you introduce into the market and adjust, as you go along the way. So for us at Mastercard, that's really our approach, mindset, methodology, and ongoing management.
Great, thank you, Uwa. And I think that I want to pick on something that you just mentioned, which is really about this quest for perfection. And my personal mantra is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think Mohammed also spoke to that in the sense where pick one problem, solve one problem, and then continue iterating through the process, right? Is this something that you've also observed and something that you practice at MasterCard?
Definitely. I think that, it's very unlikely. Yeah, there are a few products that you launch and you are lucky enough, right? And the product scales, but more oftentimes than not, you need to continue working around solutions and perfecting them as you go along because, product design and innovation is not something that is static, and I think many times that's really what makes the difference. But then it's also dependent on your philosophy, which is what I spoke about earlier around the mindset. Some organizations, believe that, it's best to, be perfect, and then, there's a particular standard you want to be, and then from there you continue to improve, but they set the bar very high. Other organizations, believe that is, just get, the baseline together and then iterate from there. I think that, there's no one size fits all approach, but definitely being able to have a process where you are continuously gathering data and improving on an ongoing basis is super critical. I don't think there's any substitute for it at all.
So in terms of data management, so that feedback loop to continue improving the processes as well as the iterations. So what are the lessons that we can learn from some of these outcomes and approaches? What are the key lessons and takeaways? I think the whole idea is, learning is an evolutionary process, right? And we want to ensure that Nigerian companies and financial services providers that think about embarking on this can also sort of short circuit and not make the same mistakes that you've learned. So can you share some of the lessons that we can sort of understand and build into our own processes so we don't make those mistakes again?
I think that's a very important question. I think for us in MasterCard and for me personally, I think there are two key lessons that have come out from our engagement from a product perspective. And this applies across board, whether it's Nigeria or, Kenya or Bangladesh or India or wherever. I think the first is really around, this notion of hyper customization. Today, a one size fits all approach really doesn't work. So, it's important that we're able to define our customer segments, in such a way that we are really able to understand the dynamics of customers. I think one of the sectors that we get inspiration from is really social media, for example, right? You see the news feeds that you get on Facebook or the way content is curated on Instagram or all those, social networking platform. It's customized to you and what you want to see. So I think definitely in terms of that learning and that, process, it's super important to have that level of customization, in terms of, the people we are targeting. And I think somebody made the point earlier in the workshop about, a micro enterprise in Zamfara being different from one in Lagos. A micro enterprise that is run and managed by women is very different from those managed by men. A micro enterprise whose founder is motivated by opportunity as opposed to necessity is completely different, and all that. So I think the first principle is really around that hyper customization and really being able to adjust products and services to speak to specific, needs and specific segments. I think the other aspect of it is really around, how we gather that data, and being able to get it in a way that so data is the lifeblood of innovation, right? But you also want to have the right systems and processes in place that is able to help you make sense of that data. But then beyond making sense of the data, you also want to be able to execute seamlessly. So being able to sort of merge those two aspects of getting the insights, but then being able to act on it in a way that is scalable is definitely important as well.
You say is that when you are looking at segments and customers, we shouldn't just look at demographic, because demographic is a very, different demographic indicators are very easy, but then again, they're not also homogeneous across our segments. But we should also look at behaviors. And in terms of what are the behaviors of the person who is motivated to run a business and thrive, or the strivers concept as we know it, or what are the behaviors of someone who is just running a lifestyle business that's on an occasion. And I think then the third area is also this issue about the psychometric, right? How do we also get the psychometric behaviors and attitudes into our understanding? And that gives us that rich detail that we can now use to customize for our segments. But that's also a lot of work. So how do we short circuit some of those issues as well? How have you been able to identify and do this in a Nigeria context and in other markets as well?
So I think for us, technology has, definitely played a huge part. The beauty is with the advancement in stuff like AI, machine learning, etc., you really have the opportunity to be able to really leverage insights. And like I said before, draw that, connection between insight and learnings and then execution. So for us, technology has been a huge part, in trying to get those insights and really being able to deliver our innovations, at scale, because I think scalability is also a very critical aspect of what you want to consider. So in, Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa generally, from a MasterCard standpoint, if you look at some of the solutions we've introduced in the market over the last few years, from, mobile point of sale to QR code-based solutions, to more recent innovations around SME in the box, proposition, as well as, our digital financial literacy portal and our Engage platform. I think everything has sort of come from that ability to leverage, the technology we have to really gather those insights and then anticipate, what organizations actually need and what is required from, a financial inclusion standpoint.
Now, I want to go back into something you said earlier on, which is the issue of cash displacement and basically that whole role of merchant acceptance within our context. So I think I've mentioned this time and time again. My dream for financial inclusion is that I can buy, okay? And that's really my dream for financial inclusion. So how do you at MasterCard help to conceptualize that acceptance process?
I think, so MasterCard's vision is really a world beyond cash, right? So what you've just described is really what keeps us, up at night, right? That is constantly what we are thinking about. I think that for us, it's really about, understanding that, there's no one size fits all approach, right? So when we think about acceptance, we tend to think about it, from a holistic standpoint to say, hey, there are different ways of driving acceptance, right? There are different rails. So while a POS terminal, might work for some merchants, for other merchants, it might be a QR code. For some other merchants, it might be a simple USSD service, So I think the first part is really understanding what works for what merchant, and then approaching acceptance technology in a holistic way, right? So I think that's one key aspect of it to say. And then, these are not rigid boundaries. For some, customers, it might be a combination of one or more acceptance solutions. So that's another thing to consider as well, to say, for the micro guy, it might be a simple alias that can be used over a USSD channel to make a payment. For some, it might be, a combination of that and the QR code. For others, it might be a mobile point of sale. For others, it might be a soft POS for contactless and all that. So that's one aspect of it. But I think the second aspect of it also is understanding that payment is not the only problem, So, it's easy to, because we are such a cash displacement focused company, given a vision of a world beyond cash, is easy to get caught up in that, thinking to say, oh, everything is about payment. So I think that the second important thing we also consider is, what are the other ancillary services that a merchant might want? Because many of these merchants, believe you me, they might not, payment to them is important, but that might not necessarily be top of mind. So being able to, yes, have the payment piece, but go beyond that to begin to think about value-added services, for example, right? To say, how do you help that same merchant create awareness for their services? How do you help them deliver inventory management and those other, value-added services that they might also have a need for, is equally as important. So, for us, it's really striving that balance of omni-channel and the payment technology itself, but then on top of that, building those value-added services. I personally think that, payment itself is increasingly becoming a commodity. So being able to move a transaction from point A to point B is a good starting point, but it's not enough. And I think that being able to develop and implement those value-added services is a way to not only bring in more people into the fold, but also to keep them there.
A couple of years ago, there was a report published by the Gates Foundation that developed a financial model for financial services, and it really focused on four things: accounts, cash in, cash out, transactions, and adjacencies. And I think what you're speaking to, the value-added services and building an adjacencies portfolio, so the agents and other intermediaries can actually make more money and do other things using the same channels that have been created. So, Uwa, this is nice and good when we're thinking about the Lagos environments, the Abujas, the Port Harcourts, the cities that are typically well connected. And we can't go in this conversation and to reach areas, because in our state of market report this year, what we're emphasizing is, we need to get to the youth, right? We need to get to the women who are all, and these are the key at-risk segments that we've identified, and also rural dwellers. So if we think about this and understand the fact that as a nation, generally, infrastructurally, we're still not there yet. We break infrastructure into three dimensions: the energy infrastructure that we all know about, right? There's digital infrastructure that we're still building in terms of access to telecoms, access to internet and data and things like that. And then also there's the financial services infrastructure that is yet to penetrate all our rural areas. So how do we build products and services and build these constraints in them to ensure that we can truly build an inclusive Nigeria and products that serve everyone?
I think that, again, that's really what is at the heart of this conversation around inclusivity and sustainability, right? So I think that while, there's a lot of work to do on the infrastructure side. That's also just one aspect of the conversation, right? So you are exactly right. There's without the right technology infrastructure, financial services infrastructure, etc., we are limited, and that's the truth. I've been in conversations where we are talking to partners and they're like, okay, how do we really get into the interland where there's no telco network and all that? And there are different ways that you can play around with those kind of scenarios, but at the end of the day, there needs to be some level of infrastructure in play. We've dabbled into offline models, for example, where you can do a transaction offline where there is no data or connectivity, and then take that back to do your reconciliation at some time in the future where data becomes available and all that. So there are ways to sort of manage that. But I think that beyond infrastructure and those kind of challenges, I think there are other two aspects of innovation that is also extremely important, but is seldom overlooked. And that is around process innovation as well as pricing innovation, right? Because really serving these customers that are in the rural areas and are not in the Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt also requires a fundamental rethink of the kind of economics we put on the table. I remember having, conversations in design thinking sessions where, yes, the product is all well and good. We've, leveraged all the steps of your BAU design thinking process. And, the price point just simply doesn't make any sense, right? Because you're asking somebody to, that sells a crate of Coca-Cola for 1,000 naira, right? And imagine on that crate of Coca-Cola is 50 naira. And then you're telling them to come and pay an MDR of, 50 basis points on 50 naira. It just doesn't make sense. So there's no way that, the infrastructure and all that, even if all that is in place, you still have to tackle that. So I think, innovating around pricing, is also important to really get to the last mile. And then also our process, in terms of how we deliver financial services. I remember also, developing innovations like QR code, for example, that can help radically change the dynamics of, how you drive acceptance, from a product standpoint, right? But if you are still onboarding that merchant in Zamfara or Lamaboro local government area in Kogi State, the same way you onboard a merchant in Lagos, then you're not going to be able to get acceptance to that last mile as well. So I think that, while there are ways of getting around those infrastructure challenges, we also need to consider how we innovate around process as well as pricing in addition to that.
So what you're speaking to is a very important concept, especially in financial services where we have and sort of universal prices across the country. And what I'm hearing you say is that we also need to be mindful of the fact that acceptance could also be, or lack of acceptance could also be price motivated or process motivated, not just from a product design perspective in general. Okay, great. Well, I think that we have a lot of work to do collaboratively, and we need to think around how do we break these barriers. But then from an organization's perspective, because we're talking to financial services providers here now, and what is really giving me goose pimples is the fact that how many variations will I have in my organization, and how around the different variations in the organization? Because if you tell me I have to have a different process in Zamfara, a different process in Lagos, a different process in Kogi, how do I manage that, and how do I maintain integrity and customer experience across all these dimensions?
So, that's a great question as well. And, it's not something that is easy to do, at the end of the day, because, we're talking about financial services, right? So there are standards that need to be met. So, I often joke with colleagues who say, hey, I look forward to a day where, getting a merchant onboarded on financial services is as seamless as adding a contact on WhatsApp, right? you know, we're not quite there. And I think this is where, this point you've made about collaboration is super important, right? There's a way we can take steps in mass customization, right? But I think that critical to that is this conversation of having a customer-centered approach to the way we do things. So while I might not be able to, have a detailed process for Zamfara versus Lagos, I can have a detailed process around onboarding a freelancer, for example, or an artisan versus a retailer. So I think that the science and art there is how you strike that balance, in terms of identifying the commonalities as well as the differences. There's this saying about using these mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive framework to say, how do I group together things that are mutually exclusive? So, for example, Zamfara versus Lagos might not be the most effective commonality, right? But, a freelancer or an artisan, versus a retailer might be a better approach to identifying those commonalities. And we need to take it from there to begin to consider how we build these processes around onboarding. So I think, it's critical to getting this done is really having, again, is about that customer-centered approach and that mentality. I think, part of that is also realizing that, processes are made for people and not people for processes. So we need to be, again, innovative in the way we design those processes. But it's not an easy thing to do, I can tell you that.
We need to have this innovation culture. We need to think about things from a different perspective, right? And maybe take a step back and look at it from a different lens. And you brought out an issue of, okay, let's look at it from a vertical lens rather than just from... Oh, I can't let you go without talking about how do we de-risk some of these digital transactions, because you're talking about an omni-channel experience, you're talking about, digital and offline point of sales, reconciliation later on. But then again, you know that one of the biggest factors of anything digital is this issue about cybersecurity and safety of funds and the whole consumer protection and redress process. So how do we as merchants even start to de-risk some of these things that we're talking about so we can actually give our customers some more confidence in the fact that we've got their backs?
I think that, again, that's a very important consideration, right? And I think at the heart of it is still about understanding who we are dealing with, right? And the kind of technology infrastructure we then put in place. So I'll give you an example. One of the things we've done in MasterCard over the last few years is to really look at the way we drive transactions for different merchant segments. So if you look at push versus pull systems of payments, for example, inherent in the push system is a lesser level of chargeback and dispute, because for push-based transactions, for example, the transactions are originated and authenticated by the consumer. So it's very cash-like. So if you have that kind of system, it's a better way to manage some of those risks, right? So you can actually tone down, the chargebacks and associated risks for certain classes of merchants, versus if you have a pull system where I'm essentially giving you my card and then you are using a POS to pull money from my account, right? So I think being able to, again, design the kind of digital technology we are rolling out to align with the kind of risks that we believe are inherent in the segments we are going after is super critical as well. And then also, I think, it's all about the technology at the end of the day. So from a MasterCard standpoint, we are constantly, building capacity around cybersecurity, and building that level of intelligence into our network such that at the end of the day, we are able to leverage technologies like AI and ML to really identify and address suspicious activities. So I think that it's really a combination of multiple factors. But again, one of the recurring themes throughout this entire conversation is really being customer centered in the way we really drive these innovations.
Thank you very much, Uwan. I think that's all we have time for. But from what I'm hearing, it's really, again, we can, that's the theme of the conference, that we can only unlock these product innovations when we're customer-centric. And when we think about things holistically as well, and try and use different lenses to understand the customers rather than just a one-size-fits-all approach. I understand the fact that we need to understand the business dynamics and the business dimensions. I understand the fact that we need to think around our partner models and our partner structures, so that we're collaborating with our partners to ensure that we can reach a wider audience and scale effectively. But I think most importantly is really about how do we build solutions around the customer needs and focused around the customer needs in general. And in doing those things, honestly, and I'm saying earnestly because I think that one thing I've heard consistently is take the data. We don't get it right at the station, right? But the feedback and the data when we're continuously monitoring and bring it to continually refine. Earnest is intense, but we must also be mindful of building innovation culture across the organization because of the diversity of the market we're trying to reach. So we can tweak and we can innovate around existing culture, existing processes and around our as well as around our products. So we can have that, give the customers that holistic experience that they can use and continue building and using our products sustainably, because I think that's another important area it aligns really with what Mohammed shared from the Bcash experience, where it's not just about the design of the product, but it's a continuous iterative process of the business side and the human side and ensuring that we're solution oriented. But if we have at the core, the customer, then we can also build that solution orientation around the customer. And I think finally, your point of don't look for perfection is quite important, because I think that in our environment, we're always seeking to sort of have a super app, this one. If I remember what Mohammed said as well, what is the problem to the customer and solve that, the most pertinent problem to the customer as a mechanism for onboarding, and then you build around that in general. So thank you very much, Uwa. I really appreciate the time you've shared with us, the experiences that you shared with us. We wish you all the best in your successive journeys. I want to learn from experiences and more lessons as you document them through your life. Thank you very much, Uwa.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
now officially afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're still tuned in to the International Financial Inclusion Conference brought to you by Lagos Business School in partnership with Business Day Media. It's been a very interesting and also a very interesting fireside chat. It's always great to hear from a company such as MasterCard, motivated to go beyond cash. Thank you very much for that very insightful fireside chat. Without any further ado, I would like to move on to our first panel session entitled Turning Ideas into Viable Solutions, the Challenges of Product Development in Nigeria. And this panel session will be moderated by Dr. Ijeoma Nwagu, who is joining us. So good afternoon, Ma. Can you hear us well?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
So,
Can you hear me?
I know over to you to moderate the first session. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to confirm, can you hear me? You can hear me, perfect. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my absolute delight to bring this panel to you, which focuses on product development, turning ideas into reality. And this is where we go very granular to look at the experiences of our various providers in developing products that meet the needs of the customer and even expand the boundaries of who we think of as customers in terms of inclusion, serving the poor, women, and particularly those Nigerians in rural areas. So we want to look at that process. And it's very important that we're actually looking at this issue now, given the challenges we've experienced around the pandemic, the economic fallout relating to that, which has put providers in a position where they need to actually innovate and reimagine what is going out into the market. So I'm very delighted that we're going to explore these issues around the challenges and opportunities in product development and innovation. And with me is a very esteemed panel. We have Chikezie Egbulefu, who is the product lead at Grooming Center. You're welcome, Chikezie. And then we have Egosa Egarevba, who is the head of agent banking for Lapo Microfinance Bank. And last but not the least, we have Chisom Egwatsu, who is the head of financial inclusion strategy for eTransact. So it's a power-packed panel, and I believe that we're going to together examine some of the issues that have come up in the fire chat, as well as in the previous presentations, the keynotes, and all. So you're welcome. And as Lale, the host, mentioned, my name is Dr. Ijeoma Nwagu, and I am part of the Sustainable and Inclusive Digital Financial Services Project at LBS, which has for the past few years been examining some of these issues. And I'd like to hear your voice, Chisom. Chisom, are you with us? Are you there?
Hi, Dr. Ijeoma. Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Chisom.
It's afternoon, actually. Good afternoon.
You're welcome. All right, Chisom. I'd like you to, in the fireside chat, Uwa talked about innovation as extending to not only process and products, but also to pricing. And I was wondering about your experience, how do you, thinking of the pricing challenge and the high poverty levels that we have, how do you begin to design financial products, right, for a population who are increasingly not only wary of formal financial services, but also very, very, have less money to spend given the economic shocks we're undergoing?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ijeoma. I think, yeah, like you said, when Uwa was speaking, I was just like, this is just spot on, This is, really what we are experiencing in the industry as a whole. When it comes to affordability and pricing is a major challenge. Designing products for the financially excluded, it takes a lot. It takes a lot. So if we have to narrow down to affordability and pricing, I believe I'm not just speaking from an e-transact point of view. I believe it's something that cuts across this particular industry, because now we're talking of a human-centered design approach, to developing products. And the truth is, yes, that's the right thing to do. We have to go granular. What kind of customers are we looking to develop the solutions for? What are their problems? What are their needs? What are their pain points? What gains? You need to look at it from a solution point of view. So a user-centric design that would actually solve a particular problem or problems for these particular users. Now, if we're talking about that, that's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of cost to put together this product. So you talk about research, you talk about, everything that the embodiment of the product design, the process that you have to go through to put together that product is a whole lot. The infrastructure you need to do that, the team you need to do that, the product itself is a whole lot. So if you're going to do all that, and then at the end of the day, let's not forget that the FSPs are also here to make money. They're here to make profits. Every organization, I believe, is out there, a private organization, so that they can make a return on their investment. And in as much as the people we're trying to serve are people who, like you said, a lot of them are below the poverty line. Now that's where the problem is. A lot of these guys are below the poverty line. The FSPs are also here to make money. Yes, we know financial inclusion is a global phenomenon, and we want to help further this cause, but something needs to be done. Now, after developing this product and you're trying to push it, or now pass these products to the people that you develop the solution for, it becomes a problem, because these same people will not be able to afford it. They will not be able to afford it. A lot of them live below the poverty line. A lot of them don't have a steady source of income. So it becomes a problem to be able to afford the solution if we have to go that homogeneous in developing such a solution for them. So I believe that I think it's something that we need to look at from a holistic standpoint. Beyond just the FSPs, I think policymakers also need to come into this. I think the government needs to come into this, because at the end of the day, we are trying to achieve a goal. We want to get to 95% inclusion by 2024. And if we're going to do that, it has to be a collaborative effort. It has to be a teamed up effort. Everybody needs to put all hands on deck. So for me, I think the government also needs to come in. So for example, we need to start looking at subsidization of products, this product. So there could be an innovation challenge where FSPs can be asked to come up with solutions, innovative solutions that would address specific issues for this particular market segment. Take, for example, the women, the youths. Now, different FSPs can come up with these solutions, and then there can be a challenge. And the FSP that comes up with the best solution can be given some sort of subsidization for this product. Because at the end of the day, like I said initially, nobody wants to go into developing a product, and then at the end of the day, you will not be able to make a return on that investment. So I think, like I said, it has to be a collaborative approach. It has to go beyond just the FSPs. The government needs to come in. I know they've been doing a lot when it comes to trader money, or the little allowances they've been given, which I think is also helping push it further. But we now need to think together and, okay, look at it holistically. How do we make much more progress? Which is what I talked about. I said, I think we should do an innovation challenge. And then from an innovation challenge, we can start looking at subsidization of these products, so that at the end of the day, the FSP will be able to develop the right product for the right people, and the people who the products have been developed for will be able to use it. Thank you.
Thank you for that submission, Chisom. Very interesting how you talk about, issues of affordability of these products, considering poverty, and then that idea, that idea of taking a problem-solving approach that involves stakeholders, providers, as well as government collaboratively addressing these issues. Thank you for that. And I'd like to invite Chikezie Ebulefu to weigh in here. So Chikezie, you're the product lead for the grooming center, which serves economically active, poor women. And I'd like to, Chikezi, are you here with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, perfect. Yes, we can
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. So,
Okay.
and Chikezi, you've participated in the product development lab, which we've been running at SIDFS, using these customer-centered design principles and practices to start to reimagine what that product development process can look like. So I wanted to hear from you what difference that could make. Do you think that could make to our current approach in industry in terms of how we innovate, how we develop products? Do you think it makes a difference? And if so, what difference?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Joma. Yeah, very well. Customer-centric design is basically understanding the before, during, and after of the customer's journey in product development. And one of the things we've been doing, and that was also emphasized during the SIDFS training, was actually getting into details of understanding the customer and the environment, and also developing a product that can be sustainable and scalable in the long run. First of all, it talks about identification of a gap in the industry that you want to fill. Thereafter, you go into developing the concept, doing your market research, business analysis, then product development before you finally launch the product. Now, this is basically a customer-centric approach to product development, and the benefit is that it brings about efficiency in the process. And efficiency in the process means that the customer is satisfied, increases the satisfaction level of the client or customers, so to speak. And also for the organization, it helps to boost the clientele base, because more people will come and be demanding for that product, which in turn will lead to increase in profitability or increase in the bottom line of the organization. So basically, customer-centric design makes a very big difference in the entire sustainability of an organization, so to speak. I will take a cue, like I said, one of the things I said during the training was that, before now, what we do in Grooming Center was basically pen and paper. But during the pandemic, we had cause to rethink, is this sustainable, considering the fact that you lock your business for some months and nothing is coming in because you are doing pen and paper. Customers have to visit your branches for them to do this transaction. If such thing happens again, is it going to be, how is the organization going to be? If the organization does not have that solid base, it means that the equity of the organization will be wiped out. So it is now time for people or for the organization to think about things, innovative way of actually meeting the customer need. And this is one of the things that brought us to participating in the SIDFS training, and also developing our smart credit, which we'll be launching Q1 and 2021, basically to increase the customer satisfaction and also part to the bottom line, so that in the future, when we have something like the COVID-19 similar pandemic, the organization will not be caught unawares. Basically, that's my submission for that.
Okay. Thank you for that, and outlining for us how the process brings us closer to the customer, which ties together, some of the same journey that Chisom described to us as well. So Chikezi, the whole purpose, as you've described, is, a more efficient process that can lead us to understanding and serving the customer. Thank you very much for that. And, we'll circle back to you to hear more about your journey. which has, you've gone quite far from what you described. And I'd like to hear from Egosa. Egosa leads the head of, she's the head of agent banking for LACPO. And Egosa, LACPO is a microfinance bank that we have known for many years as one combining the pursuit of social impact with pursuing profits, as any business. So against this backdrop, I want you to talk about how the customer-centered design has led to an expansion of your horizons, as a provider in terms of, what makes up a successful product.
Okay.
Has that changed? Sorry?
Okay. So you will tell me when I will join with video.
Egos, are you there? Please join with video.
I'm with you already.
Oh, perfect, Egosa. So please go ahead. How has this process of customer-centered design shaken up, what your understanding of what makes up a successful product and how to even organize the product development process? Because we've been talking about it expansively as something that involves not only process, but also products and even pricing. How has that this perspective shaken up what you do at LACPO?
Thank you very much, Dr. Joman. I would like to start in this manner that first, we know that customers are the bedrock of any organization. And also, when you are designing your product, they should come first. Like in LACPO, for example, we put everything we do, customers are being put at the forefront. Hence, we tag them as king and queens because of their importance to the bank. Now, in terms of developing a product, not just the product alone, in all that we do, customer centricity is being considered. You need to make your customers to be happy. You need to make your customers to be proud of the product they are receiving from you. And in designing any product, they should come first. They should be involved in that process, not at the middle or at the conclusion of that product. From the beginning, they are being involved. So because they play an important role in our product development, hence LACPO is able to retain their customer and the client base is equally high. Now, how do you make them happy? What makes your product to be successful? The ability for them to buy into your product, acceptance, because they were involved. So the acceptance is there. And because of that acceptance, again, it must be usable. It should be able to address their challenges. A product that cannot address customer challenges, then there is a problem with that product, meaning that product will never be successful. So for your product to be successful, acceptance comes in first. Customers should be able to use your product. And again, then they will not become an ambassador to you. So you don't look at your brand, you look at customers. So when you're talking about customer centricity, it's not about the brand of the organization, but it is about the customer. So you have them more. And if the customers are able to accept it, use it, they will speak for you. So your product should speak for itself. Your product should speak to the customers. And again, another thing we equally discovered that have also helped LACPO, the target market, the segment that we are addressing. So our product is being channeled towards that segment that we are addressing. So customers are willing to accept your product, speak for you on your behalf, and it also enables you to retain them. So your retention becomes very high because of the acceptance and the usage of your products.
Thank you, Mayosa. And I would like to push you further, you and Chikezie, to tell us how has, I love that you talked about that customer centricity as a mindset that these customer-centered design principles and practices have moved you towards. So what I want to hear is, has it challenged, now moving into this human-centered design, has it challenged the way you do things, even in terms of how you organize your teams to develop product? What has changed and what is changing as a result of this exposure to customer-centered design? What are the potentials?
Thank you very much. First, I want to talk about the composition of the team. Now, when you are drawing up your team for product development, it cuts across the various departments within the system. And your drawing up your team, it should be friendly in the sense that it should strike a balance between the gender balance should be there. And again, when you are preparing once you have established your team, the next thing you need to do, getting the information to address. Are you going to revamp your product? Like in lab, from the lab training we went to, we're like trying to revamp our product. Now, revamping your product doesn't mean that you have to everything set out on new product. You can revamp it through customer centricity. Now, remember that the voice of the customers help to form the board and management decision, meaning their voice is very key. And the ability for them to build loyalty with you and trust. Another key word is trust, which is very important. So when you have a product you want to revamp or a new product you are looking onto, then you get information from your customers because they are key. And this customer is not just the external customers alone, also the internal customer. They play a very crucial role in your product. So once you are able to get this information from them, from there you take down your product. In developing your product, remember that you have to involve this customer, as I said. You go out there to the field, not with yourself and your team. There's no wrong answer, there's no correct answer. So, idea generation, they should come up with various ideas. And as these ideas is coming out, it is being noted down. Then you come to that selection aspect. You select the best that suits your mission. Like Lapo, our mission statement is improving life. So whatever product we are developing, it should improve on customers' life. That is at the back of our mind. So any product we want to come up with that cannot address the life of the customer means that product cannot scale through. So
thank
that
you.
has been established.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So and now I'd like to encourage our attendees, please send across your questions, comments on the chat. We'd love to, it's an interactive process, so we want to hear from you. And so over to you, Chikezie. Tell us about, what customer-centered design, human-centered design, where the voice and life of the customer is at the center. What has that meant for you, or what does it mean for you internally in terms of how you organize your product development process? And so can you very quickly, maybe 1 minute, give us a response to that? And Chisom, please give us also your own perspective on this question from the e-Transact experience. Chikezie, are you there? I can't hear him. Chikezie?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, please.
I just said very quickly, the challenge it has brought up is just the major challenge that has shown up in this customer-centric design is feedback from clients is very, very key. Before now, what we were doing was we just, and it applies to most FSPs, because I've been opportunity to work in a couple of them. What basically they do is just, okay, we want to launch this product, we want to design a product. We sit down in the boardroom, think about what we want to do, fix the interest rate, fix the features of the product, and send it to a feed for people to buy in. But for customer-centric design, what we've come to realize is that you need to have feedback. You need to have feedback from the client. Feedback is very, very key because it is the feedback from the client that will determine your final product and whether that product becomes sustainable and viable. It is the feedback. I'll give you an example. One, from just what we did during the SIDFS training, is that we actually wanted to develop a smart product for our client, a smart learning product. And what we actually wanted to do was design a product that is that can be used on any smartphone. That was just our target was just smartphones. But when we went to the market, we discovered that 70% of the clients we talked to were not using smartphones. It's only 30% of them were using smartphones. So it got us thinking that, okay, if we are to scale up or design this product that is meant for smartphones, we're only targeting 30% of our client base. So that's when we came back, when I said, okay, it is now for us to design a product that is that can be used on both smartphone and feature phone in order to target a wider universe. So this is one of the things that customer-centric design does for you and for your organization. And in the process of developing this kind of product, you find out that it makes your a product efficient and also increases the target audience or customer for your client. And at the end of the day, as to the bottom line, basically that is it. The other things about communication, which is very, very key, Efosa mentioned it, is that in your team, everybody's opinion matters. That is one of the things, learnings we took home. You don't just say that because this person is a junior staff, is bringing an idea, it does not count. Everybody's opinion matters because you don't know who is going to get the opinion that will take the product to the next level. Basically, that's it from me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those perspectives. Very interesting. And I like how you bring together, everybody has said the customer is king. That product must be customer-centric, and human-centered design allows us to unpack that. So what you've also said is that there has to be business, it has to be feasible for the business, looking at what your business needs and strategies are. And then also that idea of market viability, which has come up through the conversation, that those products must be able to sell and be accepted in the market as such. Very interesting. So Chisom, can you weigh in here? And I have a very interesting comment in the chat from Zeno. Zeno Afegbe says, while we have been talking about the what and the how, we go about this product innovation, he says we should also consider the why. Each stakeholder's core motivation would affect their patience with customer-centered design process, and also the length of any product solutions or pilots. Customer-centered design requires patience, empathy, and mitigation of unconscious bias, even among providers. So that's a very interesting perspective to bring in. And Chisom, go ahead and answer the previous questions, and if you want to weigh in on this as well, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Joma. So
Sure.
for us, like you said, human-centered design or customer-centric design has increasingly become, the in thing right now, and it's beyond the fact that it's been said, it's actually needed. It's a concept that we intentionally need to apply, if we're going to act, and even cuts across the financial inclusion landscape. So talking of product design, whichever industry you're featuring in, customer centricity is extremely key because it makes it easier when it comes to product development. After putting together a product, you find out that the ease to pass this product on to the customer is there. You're taking a pull approach, or rather, a pull approach rather than a push approach. You're not shoving the product down the customer's throat, because the customers already see the reason why they need the product, because you designed it specifically for them. So it can't be overemphasized. The need for a human-centered design approach in product development can be overemphasized. And at eTransact, this is something we are currently working on. So for example, when you talk about the steps that we take to actualize this. Some of the steps are, first of all, we have to determine the industry of interest. So you have to decide, okay, this is the industry I want to play in. What's the competitive landscape like? What's the current state of play? Who are the, or what are the products already being churned out? And who are these customers who are buying this product? Then you have to now start narrowing down to decide, okay, what customer profile, what customer segment do I want to narrow down to? Do I want to serve? Now, when you start narrowing down to the customer segment, you can now say, okay, this is the customer segment. What are the attributes of this customer segment? What is the demographics of this customer segment? The psychometrics, you talk about the behavioral attributes of the customer segment. Then when you're able to get all this data together, you can now start looking at the common traits amongst all of these attributes, and then start stringing it together and looking at the pain points, the needs, the jobs that needs to be done by these customers. And all this is now what's going to form the value proposition. Now, the value proposition, of course, is what you're now going to use to design the product. So by the time you come up with the value proposition and a product, you come up with a minimum viable product, you go to the market to test run it, find out what the market is saying about the product, the MVP, get feedbacks, and then you go back again and you look through the feedbacks, maybe make some additions based on the feedbacks gathered from the field, and then launch. So I think this is typically what we are doing right now in terms of product development design and how we go about putting together products.
Interesting. Thank you for that. And our time is coming to a close. And we do have, thank you for that. We do have some interesting conversations also coming up in the chat around Chiemela Ubani talks about we must think about digital, must it always be digital? Should we not also consider the population that does not use phones, possibly for so many reasons, and design a product suitable for them that can be deployed using one-on-one contact, okay? And then Saidi Olakbade says that every product development should start with a detailed user story before going into developing. So the point being that how you build the product according to the user story expectation and matching the user story to the pricing may be difficult for the customer in an unviable environment, which has a chunk of people who do not have access to financial services. So he wanted to know how to close the gaps, putting into consideration that microfinance banks should focus more on financial inclusion, and also making sure that customers in unviable environments are able to accept their products in terms of pricing. So thank you for putting across these thoughts. And I'd like to ask our panelists to address some of these concerns in a very 1, 2, 3 sentence, in fact, 2 sentence closing about the way forward. We have also here that concern around pricing, even if you're starting from a firm user story, Chisom just walked us through the entire product development process using customer-centered design, and even using customer segmentation to understand that user story better. But how do you still factor in that pricing issue? And how do you also account for the fact that, not everybody is digital? So what's the way forward? All you've learned, all the possibilities around customer-centered design. How would you describe very briefly, 2 sentences, the way forward as your closing statement? Thank you. So with Chisom, you've just spoken, so we can give you a minute.
Okay.
So Egosa, can you come in?
Okay.
Egosa, are we there? Okay, Chikeze, we can circle back to Egosa as we close. Chikeze.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just go straight to pricing. For pricing, as a financial service provider, various things go into determining your pricing of a product. First of all is the number of the resources. No, the major one is the cost of your fund. That is a major factor. Of course, you want to have a margin on that too. And basically, these are the two major items that determine your pricing. There are other ones that are not too, that you can manage, but for the cost of fund, which is a major item, is that for the pricing to come down, then you need to have a cheaper source of fund. Take, for instance, you're getting a fund at 20%, and you want to roll out a product and you're giving the product at 19%. That product will not be viable. At the end of the day, it will just die. They need to, for it to be sustainable, there has to be a mark of profitability, you understand, on that product. So if you are getting a cost of fund, I mean, your cost of fund is about 20%, you put maybe say 2%, making it 22%, that's what you have. But if you have a source of fund that is cheaper, take for instance, the CBN talked about solar, rolling out 5 million solar home yesterday in one of the conferences we had yesterday, and they're going to provide, the CBN is going to provide about 140 billion. Now, if the CBN does that and gives 140 billion for solar product development at a very cheap rate, say 6%, it means that FSP getting that, assessing that fund, can actually give out a product for about 8%, just put a 2% margin on that. So basically that is the determinant of the cost of fund, which is very, very key for a product to be sustainable. Otherwise, you cannot run a product, a sustainable product based on grant. It is going to die within the shortest possible time. Then for the digital aspect, like I told you that, yeah, I gave you an example of the grooming experience during the SIDFS training that we said we were going to do digital. We're going to do digital smartphone. That is our thought. But when we went to the market, we discovered that 70% of our clients were not using digital smartphones. They were just using feature phones. So what did we do? We came back to the drawing board and said, okay, we were going to include those feature phones users in our product development. So what it does is that you come back and design a product that is universally acceptable, because you want to scale up this project and make it sustainable. That's basically it. So for digital, we can design a product that is for both digital users and also those are not literate enough to use digital phones. Yeah.
Thank you. Egosak, do you want to weigh in now?
Okay, Dr. Juma, thank you very much. I think Chigozie, he has spoken very well. I want to look at, like LAPO, we are attending to the bottom pyramid people, and we look at products that meet their needs. For example, savings products that all can easily participate in. And again, using digital aspect in pushing down these products, functional phone from the lab training that we attended, we discovered that functional phone will be more suitable for them. However, using functional phone also might also be that we can also like drop some persons out. However, using functional phone and also meeting, using the agents platform in reaching out to these people at a reduced cost, because for them to like move from their business place to commercial banks to save or to microfinance banks to save is already a cost on them. But taking agents banking, for example, closer to these people, or roving agents that moves around, it might not just be a city agent, but a roving agent can also help this customer to reduce in terms of cost reduction.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So Chisom, you're going to end up with us. You're going to end for us. Chisom, go ahead. Just very 2 sentences. Way forward.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Joma. So for me, I think the way forward, if we're going to achieve financial inclusion at the last mile, there are certain important things that we need to do. Innovation is critical. So that's what we talk about, of course, customer-centered design. We need to start thinking of designing products for these specific customers, So innovation is critical. FSPs need to start, renovating, wearing their innovation cap, thinking of the particular customer segment. Of course, I think it was, I can't remember. I think it's LBS that said if you were to describe financial inclusion in a person, it would be a woman, in the Northeast or Northwest, that is single, and single and does not have a job, I think. So that's when you talk of the physical embodiment of financial inclusion, that's what you're talking about. You're talking of women in the Northeast and the Northwest. You're talking about the youths, in these areas. These are priority areas. So if we're talking of pushing financial inclusion and driving it for the last mile, we have to start thinking of innovation, customer-centered design. We have to start talking of focusing on these key customer segments from a strategic standpoint. We also have to start talking of collaboration, empathy, and of course, empathy is designing these products with these guys in mind. Collaboration, working with FSPs, governments, regulators. Everybody has to put all hands together to make this work. I think that would be it.
Thank you. Thank you, Chisom. Thank you, Egosa. Thank you, Chikezie, for bringing the topic to life for us in terms of turning ideas, into reality. I was going to summarize, but I believe Chisom pulled it all together there. And I'd like to thank the audience for all your questions and comments coming through. Very interesting for that. Very interesting. And at this point, I'd like to close this panel and hand over to Ibuku, my colleague, for the rest of our agenda. We have another panel coming up. Thank you so much and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Joma.
Thank you, Lale. Appreciate it.
Wonderful panel session entitled Reality, the Challenges of Product Innovation. That was a very interesting and thought-provoking panel session. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Olawale Ajayi, who is a professor of legal, social, and political environment of business here at Lagos Business School. He will be moderating the next and final panel session entitled Financial Service Innovation and Winning Executive Buy-in. Professor Ajayi, over to you.
Thank you very much. And I hope it will be a time well spent. We have a very important topic on financial service innovation and winning executive buy-in. The last panel has spoken about, product development, all the exciting ideas about continually niggles many people is the story of M-Pesa. Everybody knows about M-Pesa and how it has revolutionized financial services in Kenya and giving us a new model, really, of innovation. And that's an African story. But innovation. And many a time we all, keep scratching our heads and wondering what happened or what is happening. Is it that we're not as innovative in the financial services sector? Does that mean that the executives are rather more interested in counting naira and kobo? Or is it the product Today, we're not looking at the enabling policy areas. We really want to go into the organizations, go into the industry, and identify whether we really have an innovation culture, innovation awareness, in the financial services industry, do executives environment or atmosphere for those products that are inclusive, that will not only financial inclusion, will lead to economic inclusion? And what is it that product development teams are doing or need to do in order to be able to win, the support of executives to launch these, what do you call it, customer-centric, completely innovative products available channels, or rather turning customers into channels, just fulfilling the needs of the customer. So that shouldn't be too difficult to do, so it seems. So we want to look at this topic, especially in light of disruption that is very common, not only COVID-19 delivering disruption, and we see a lot of non-bank entities, really roiling the field. The central bank, the Bofia Act, presumably wants to tamp down, but we'll see how that will go. So let me introduce the distinguished panel to help us look at this topic. I have with me Mr. Taiwo Jordan. Of the Consumer Protection Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria. We have Mrs. Olanike Kolawole. She is the head of agency banking at EcoBank. And we have also Ms. Odunayo Eweniyi, who is Chief Operating Officer at PiggyVest. These are, people who can tell us where the cookie crumbles, if I may use that. The talk goes on, and then at the right time, we will hopefully be able to refer to your questions. Let me start by asking Taiwo, looking at the industry generally, and certainly, of course, for the banking sector, is there really an innovation culture? Is there innovation awareness? Do executives that vibrates innovation? I know banking is said to be a conservative trade, so I don't know whether innovation and banking are oxymorons. I don't know. So Taiwo, what do you think?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon and good day to all our listeners. I'm very happy to be here. Professor Jai, if you had asked me this question some 18 months ago, I probably would have struggled to answer. But if there is an innovation awareness with what has happened with the pandemic, it's really a big yes, really. And I'll quickly give some points why I believe that there is some awareness about innovation across financial service provider. Of course, like I said, the devastating effect of the pandemic and the need to rethink how we want to do business, how we want to serve our customers remotely, how we want to serve our customers at the comfort of their homes. It's one major areas that have driven executives to the drawing table. And of course, the answer is you need to innovate. You need to be able to do things differently. Of course, and key to this is even the customers demand themselves on how they want to be served. So customers are clearly demanding how they want to be served. They don't want to break a sweat. There are so many options, and so that drives innovation and digital awareness across financial service providers. And of course, With the pandemic comes the inherent need to manage costs, to be able to do a lot more with very few resources. And breaking your head around this, asking the right questions. How am I going to do this? How do I grow scale? How do I reduce the number of brick and mortars, but then double the number of customers that I have? Are also critical questions that have driven innovation awareness across the industry. And competition is another thing, like you rightly mentioned, when the financial technology companies came up and they started doing things in multiples that the banks and the financial service providers are not able to do. You want to keep your market share. Yeah, you don't want to lose the market you built over time. You don't want to go back with stories to your shareholders to tell them that your market has gone down. And so you need to be able to think on your feet. And I think this is driving innovation. And when I talk about very quickly on the digital part of it, is the myth or the misconception that because we serve people at the bottom of the pyramid, therefore they may not be technologically savvy. I think that has been broken now because almost if you meet the corn seller or if you meet the roasted plantain seller at the side of the road, it's telling you that if you don't have change, you can transfer to my account. So everybody seems to clearly understand that this is the way it's going. And so I think those points really drives the awareness for innovation. And it's also forcing organizations to drive that innovation culture. And if we're going to the discussion, I'll probably let you know some of the few things we've done in our organization to ensure that everybody is brought to speed to embrace the need for innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So it's that was a good fire on the mountain as far as the industry is concerned. Well, okay, let me ask Nike. She's in the big deposit money banks.
I'm having some disruption there.
Can you share with us whether the executives in the big, the deposit money banks are now, really turning into ballerinas, trying to, or is it now conductors trying to create an enabling environment that makes everybody, agile?
Okay, I'm having some challenges on network here, but I believe you can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear. Please. Yes, please go on.
Okay, things are changing so fast. So the top executives don't have any option but to actually change. Although the fear of, return on investment, when are we going to break even on this? What is the return on this investment and all that? But if you don't change, you'll be swept off. Number one, the disruption coming into banking industry is huge. I mean, we have about 25 fintechs involved in distribution and payment right now, registered with SANET. The central bank has registered about 3 payment service banks. Very huge. And whether we like it or not, the technological advancement that is going on right now, everything is moving so fast. So if you do not move, you will be so irrelevant. The margins are thin out too. The era of interest income is over. It is more of transactional income now. So what a big executive who is forward thinking is looking at is, how can I have 10, 20 million customers on my platform doing 2-3 transactions a day, even if it's 10 naira? I'm earning. That is where the income is coming from now. The huge interest income era is over. So if you're going to be in the retail business, you have to be forward thinking. You have to live in the reality of the technological advancement and the real disruption. The disruption is for real. And it's, I mean, and I can say for Nigeria, I don't think they're there yet. I've been in Kenya for like 4.5 years. What I saw there and what we have there, we're not even near 25% of what has happened there. So it's just a reality. We were looking at some figures of agent transactions in Kenya in the last 6 months was 800 million transactions. 6 months, half year. For Nigeria, January to October, about 300 million, and we are 200 million people.
Wow.
So we have just started. So an executive that doesn't think that way will be swept up. For us in EcoBank, we have the digital drive from the group perspective in the last 5 years, and with the focus. And we have what we call digital challenge, bringing the fintechs in to pick some ideas from them, and with implementing. So that's the way to go.
Well,
This is
so
what will drive growth.
It's really fire on the mountain, but I don't know how much of it is, what do you call it now, aspirational, or how much of it is really fire, under your jacket as far as executives are concerned. But we will come back to that. Let me move. Yeah, let me move over to our colleague from the central bank. You are the consumer protection czar. How do you see financial service providers across their segments in terms of customer centricity, in terms of, giving voice to the customer, particularly in terms of developing products or in how services are delivered? What would be your own surmise of where we are now?
All right, thank you, Professor, for giving me this opportunity, and good afternoon, everyone on the call. What I'm going to share with you is just a personal perspective to the extent that I'm not an operator, so I will be wearing a regulator's cap. For us at the central bank, consistent with our consumer protection mandate, one key element of our work is to vet products before they are launched by financial services providers. And in doing that, we are guided by a certain criteria. Now, based on my supervisory experience, I can say for a fact that what we see is a bit mixed. You have on one side of the spectrum many financial service providers that bring products that we vet, putting the customer as the centerpiece of their value proposition. You can glean that, from the features of the products they are launching or they seek to introduce, the benefits, and so on. There's a strong pitch in those, in the product literature around the customer as the centerpiece. But then again, there are other institutions on the other side of the spectrum. You get the sense that they are more, the design and the features of those products are basically centered around what technology can do, basically highlighting the features and innovation, without that strong pitch around the customer. But if I'm to place these two tendencies on a scale, I would say, by and large, most financial services providers have this customer centricity as a core element in their value proposition. And I think it is a general trend in the industry. And for good reasons too, because with the disruptions that we've seen in the landscape, that's fundamentally changed the landscape. It will be in the best interest of financial service providers to design products that can delight, their customers. Otherwise, they will be out of business. So it's a logical thing to do. So that's my short response to your question, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, it looks like it's the logical thing to do, is the practical thing to do, but we'll find out how far along the curve we have gone. Thank you, Mustafa. Let me turn to Odunayo. You are from the disruptor community. Even though M-Pesa really is not quite a disruption because it's been done in collaboration. So I really don't think actually it's a question of upending the banks. It's probably more of finding more collaboration. But tell us, Odunayo, how do you see things? Particularly, how do you guys weaponize customer centricity, as Mustafa has said, that makes you so compelling? Or do you think the banks have come way up to speed, at least in the past, maybe, is it 8 months or so? Odunayo, are you still with us? Has she dropped off? Well, maybe we'll come back to Odunayo. Let me move on then to Taiwo. Give me a sense of the typical product team. There's literature, of course, that it's tough for middle-level managers to win executive buy-in. There's a very lucid study by Ashford and co. in the Harvard Business Review 2015, talking about the need for product managers to issue, sell, be a bit political, manage their emotions, frame, the new product or the proposition in the way that it will make sense to the executive, not merely looking at the objectives of the organization, but how the executive thinks. What is really the picture in Nigerian banking circles? Is this what middle-level managers are still fighting or trying to gain expertise on?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question, but I'm going to approach it with some level of care because I have a different kind of mindset to this, and I'm going to put it this way. Who is leading your innovation strategy? Who is leading your digital strategy? So to start with, I don't think it's even a job for middle management. I think it's a job for a senior executive to handle. All right, so the board must be brought into perspective about what is needed. And once you have the board buy-in and the executive, like you said, it's a fire on the mountain, it's what they're looking at doing, you will see that the handshake with middle management, and in fact, everyone in the organization becomes so much easier. So we've had instances of organizations where even the chief innovation officer earns more than the MD, and also has a dotted reporting line to the board of directors. So when you have that in place, and I think that is where the mind shift should be looking at. Okay, my chief innovation officer is sufficiently senior enough. So we look highball to highball on first name basis. And so there is nothing so political about what I want to say. Okay. But the major challenge has always been in the area of the capital outlay. The return on investment, is it making sense? Are we ready as an organization to make losses on investments of this magnitude in the first couple of years, knowing that the benefits will come, and Nigerian FSPs looking in that direction, that this is a marathon and not a dash. And that is where the executive and the management buying comes in. And when you're able to lay that critical foundation from the onset of the innovation journey, what you then begin to see is that everything begins to fall in. And so that there must be the collaboration. So you have from the senior executive to the last mile to the middle management, understanding clearly that this is what we want to do as an organization. This is where we want to be in the next 1 year, in the next 2 years as an organization. And you group them. And so, okay, in Action International, we have what is called the Idea Bank. And the Idea Bank is not even restricted to middle management. Everybody can put in an idea there. And people sitting to sit through the idea and say, what is happening here? How do we do it? So there must be, you must have this culture of openness in the organization to be able to embrace the innovation culture. So there's always been some roadblocks to the kind of culture you want to develop. And that is the fear of people thinking, I'm going to lose my job, or the fear that my idea is not going to be fantastic enough. But when you begin to celebrate ideas, and you know, it's fantastic because we did a survey and 75% of our staff are millennials, and they think innovation, they think digital. So you become, you develop a win-win team if you handshake with them. And so we even have a millennial chat group. We have a millennial group in the bank where they banter within themselves because they rather even want to be responsible to themselves than to their superiors. So you allow them to do their thing and you allow them to escalate to it when they are ready to escalate it to you. So number one is you must get the right person to lead it. It should not be a middle management senior thing. It must be middle management, executive, board buying. And it must be an open organization that embraces innovation.
Thank you very much, Taiwo. You've given us what appears to be the best practice. Let me turn to Nike. Nike, one of your, should I say competitors? One of the DMBs actually boasted, or is it they said they were going to win, or they will win the fintech revolution. That's very daring, and it probably speaks to what Taiwo has said. Maybe they have a reason for saying so, but is it that easy for executives, to be that daring when you have to manage the bottom line? You have to think about delivering profit. And then maybe there's also the point that do we actually have the right mix in terms of demographics on the boards? Because if it's the millennials who do innovation and you have the octogenarians, no, they're not quite octogenarians. Well, if you have the 20th century executives, how do you get that marriage where the millennials are mentoring the executives and they are mentoring the 20th, what did they call them, baby boomers, yeah? And the baby boomers are mentoring the millennials in business.
Yeah. I think for an organization that wants to succeed, you just have to listen to the younger ones. For us in EcoBank, in Nigeria, even across the group, there's a little bit of shift in average age. And in the last 2-3 years, we really went out to employ a lot of what we call graduate trainees and management trainees. There are a lot of them around us right now. And they were put into different departments. And then they have some kind of idea group to actually lead in what we want to do. I mean, for some strategic decision and all that. For me, for my department, in agency banking, I was given about a team of about 18 of them to work with to actually start the real business. Go out there, go and look at what every other person is doing, what does the consumer want and all that. So they came back and then with a lot of figures and all that, and we started to work about almost 18 of them. And you need to listen to them to actually see the way the market is. And like the last speaker said, an average organization will determine their short-term, their medium-term, and their long-term goal. Because if you're going to invest a lot of money on innovation, most of the time you don't expect the return to come immediately. You must think forward of what do we want in the next 5 years? Where do we want to be? What kind of customers do we want to have? And where do we want to be? For what you said about competition, I mean, about 3, 4, 5 banks recently said we want to go old co way. They are not foolish. They know what they're talking about. The going old co way is for them to actually form some smaller companies to actually take care of innovation. You will see them coming out with payment companies, with insurance, and all that. Let's just watch and see. And for us who have not formed OldCo, there are some internal things and reorganization that we're doing on the inside to actually have the payment bank separate from the real thing to actually focus on payment because payment is huge and big. And if you're not thinking like that, you are almost gone.
Well, that's very interesting. So it looks like a lot of things are shifting. But what both of you are really saying is the onus, or is it the buck, stops at the executive table to create the right environment to sort of encourage innovation. And of course, when we look at the technology companies who are sort of key markers of innovation, what one found, we're not saying banking has to be exactly the same, is that they changed the culture, they even changed the way, the ambience of the organization. They were more willing for people to think, to make mistakes, question the status quo, and so on and so forth. I don't know if Odunayo is back with us. Maybe she has technical problems. Oh, that's quite sad. But let me go to Mustafa. I'm not asking you to speak for Central Bank, but if the operators are in an industry space and in a general business environment that is requiring more nimbleness, more openness, more experimentation, from your perspective, what customer-related insights can you give? And then what policy enablers do you think is required? Because if regulations are still old school, then it means we're saying that the operators must be old school. I do know that central bank has gone a long way in terms of the guidelines are actually also very responsible for shaping or encouraging the shift. So I want you to think from these two perspectives. What do you see, or what would you recommend in terms of the FSPs being a lot more customer-centered? And we're not talking here merely about products. We're talking about them keying into economic inclusion. I think it was Nikke's MD who was with us last year who said, I don't like that term financial inclusion because it looks like it's saying scrape the bottom pot. Let's think about economic inclusion. Let's talk about the larger market. And I think either Nikke or Taiwo was saying, Nikke was saying, you're looking for velocity of transactions and you need the scale. So because the profits are not quite there. Are we on the regulatory side, doing enough to help operators move in that direction whilst we ensure that safety, integrity are of course not compromised?
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. That's a very interesting question, and it's something that is very, very dear to us at the central bank. Because listening to you, one thing that just hit me is this popular notion that the regulators are very conservative. They are not open to innovation and so on. Nothing can be further from the truth. The reality is that for us at the central bank, and indeed this is reflective of all regulators, we have two areas of interest. Our role is dual. Number one, we play an enabler role, and that is that can be seen in the raft of reforms and regulatory initiatives that we have churned out over the years that have helped in catalyzing and more or less seeing most of the groundbreaking and changes that we've seen in the financial services landscape, particularly in the last decade. Recently, we just issued a regulation on, for sandbox operations, and basically speaking to this idea of, catalyzing, development in the financial service industry, opening the, payment space, as it were, to encourage innovation. That is ongoing, and you must have heard about it. It's common knowledge. The document is being finalized. We did this, I think, in June this year. We received quite a number of comments, which are being finalized. Very soon, the final document will be out, and that would be a major game-changing development that would really, inch us, forward in terms of realizing our financial inclusion objectives. There are quite a number of other complementary, initiatives and reforms to support this. Again, another key role that we play is the guardian angel role, because for us, and that is where my department comes in, yes, we are desirous of fostering innovation in the financial services industry, but at the same time, we cannot allow financial services providers to run amok. The interest of the consumer or the customer is king, is very paramount. So we need to put in place those protective guardrails to ensure that the consumer is protected every step of the way. So that said, in terms of consumer-related insights that I can share with maybe bank executives and product teams, I think what I can say is it's very, very crucial that in the product development, process, from the stage of ideation right through, the entire, stages, we need to be very, very, customer-centric. We need to also be very, very conscious of what the regulatory rules are around, the development of such a product. What regulatory requirements are we supposed to observe? And let me give you an example. Recently, we've received quite a number of, and this is quite is something I would like to recommend, for other financial service providers. We've received calls from some banks, looking to introduce some products, but they want to be clear in terms of what the regulatory boundaries are, or what the regulatory requirements are. And they will call in either by phone, or they will send in a formal, request for clarification. And we'll do that quite a lot. And I think it has helped in ensuring that when they come with their products for us to vet and approve, there is little or no, issues, because we've had instances where products are submitted and we have to throw them back, So these are issues that I think, product teams and even the executives need to bear in mind. And of course, in the course of this, conference, I've heard talk around, executives pushing back in respect of maybe what some project teams, some ideas that they come up with. I would like to suggest that they should be open. The landscape is changing. Quite a number of, new developments in the landscape, and it behoves both the executives and the team, product teams, to come up with, bespoke products and services that speak to the needs or that address the core needs of their customers, and that is the right way to go. The other day, I heard a bank is introducing a new generation ATM, an ATM that will basically enable you to make withdrawals, without any contact. You can, send your request for cash withdrawals ahead of, the actual transaction. That is quite a very good innovation and a welcome development, given the prevailing COVID-19 situation. So there are quite a number of opportunities out there that banks and financial service providers generally can tap into and come up with products and services that can meet the needs, the core needs of their customers, consistent with their strategic objective of growing their bottom line and at the same time meeting the needs of their customers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mustafa. I think we should round up now. There's a question on the chat box, but I think it was actually addressed to you, Mustafa, but I think you have addressed it partially. I will now give Taiwo and Nike the opportunity to deal with aspects of the question. The question is, how do you balance customer centricity and profit? I think Taiwo, I'd like you to deal with that. Then I'd like Nike, I would like you to just speak briefly, or give advice rather to product development teams on what they can or what they should do in order to be more successful. And I think with that, with those contributions, we'll be able to bring this session to a close. So Taiwo, do we start with you?
Thank you very much, Prof. And that's a very good question. You see, I would like to bring up 2 points immediately. The first is that customer centricity is simply about looking at the customer the way they want to be served and serving them, giving them the products that they want. So you're serving them one way. And if you continue to serve them that way, the way they don't want, they have options to migrate and go to where they will be served the way they want. So eventually that profit will disappear. So when your customer-centric approach is led by the real customer's aspiration, it will be profitable. You need to just understand that if you do it the way the customer wants, then they will be ready to buy the product you're presenting to them. But that may require some backbone infrastructure that may take some time for you to recoup the investment on. And that's why I said that there must be the board buying. But quickly to the second point is the fact that we need to encourage shared services. We need to encourage collaboration. You mentioned that. I mean, I'm currently working with InterSwitch. I'm currently working with Flutterwave. I'm currently working with Curious and quite a number of fintech organizations, because I cannot develop the technology that they have, but I can buy or I can lease some of their technology on a pay-as-you-go, and it makes it easier for me. It makes it faster. It makes it cheaper for me. And so when we talk about the fintechs, I don't see them as competition as such, because I keep saying this, and some people call me Mr. Collaboration. I say that the fintech company can only service customers that the banks have acquired. So if a fintech organization wants to talk to you, they ask for your account number. And so you can deepen that relationship. You can have that handshake with them and improve on serving your customer the way they want to be served. Understand that for banks, what we have done over time is a product-centered approach. The fintech have come to focus on customer-centered approach to business, and that's what you call customer centricity. So if you want to sell those products, or if you want to think the way the fintechs are doing, you need to collaborate with them and shake hands with them, and then you can do it at a more efficient and effective way. Thank you.
Thank you. Nike, you want to bring this to a wrap?
Okay. Thank you so much for that question that you asked me on what will a product development team will consider as focusing on for success. I will break it into three. Number one, what are they looking at? What they are developing, is it what the market needs? Number one. Various speakers have actually spoken about that. Bringing to the consumer what the consumer needs. Number two, how are you going to distribute it in the most convenient way? Is it convenient? Is it easily accessible? If you have a beautiful product and it's not readily accessible, one speaker spoke about the fact that they were developing some mobile, whatever, and found out that majority of those they wanted to give it to, they do not have the right phone. So, if you're a developer, you are supposed to have sat down to look at how accessible, how convenient is it for this target market to access this product. And are you actually focusing on the right target market? And are they able to access and in the most convenient way, rather? Number three, price. You have to give to the average consumer what they can afford. So until you've actually been able to break it down to the most cost-efficient way of them accessing it, you have not succeeded. So need, distribution, and the right price that the market can actually afford to take the product. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this has been a very exciting conversation. I'm particularly delighted that the point has been made that executives need to actually facilitate innovation. I'm glad that we've also spoken about the need for product teams to center on not only convenience, but they also must be business-minded to ensure that it's going to deliver, it's affordable, it's going to deliver the long-term growth that the organization requires. I'm glad also that we've spoken about the need to be open-minded and collaborative. I think Microsoft, Google, and so on are not necessarily the most innovative because they come up with all the innovation, but they do have an ecosystem of innovators that they do work with. And because fintechs, at least for now, focus a bit more on also quick wins. I think we will need the banks also to be a bit more pushful. We will need everybody to be pushful in trying to include those who are in the larger segments or the larger market. We will also need regulators to continue to facilitate this process. So I want to say thank you to our guests, or rather our panelists, Taiwo, Jorda, Mustafa, Haruna, Olani, Kekola, Wole, and we're sorry, Oduayo, we lost you, I think, through technical issues. And for the participants, thank you very much. I see some people raising their hands. I'm sorry, we expected you to put your comments in the chat, but I'm glad that you are still interacting with us. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you so very much, Professor Ajayi, for that very interesting and thought-provoking panel session. I'm sure that, and thank you very much to the esteemed panelists for joining us today. I think we can turn off everyone's videos. Yes, thank you very much. So without any further ado, we're going to play a video before we then do the closing remarks, as we have come to the near end of what has been an exciting 3.5 hours. I hope that you have enjoyed listening to the keynote speech, the welcome speech, the fireside chats, and essentially the conversation is surrounding trying to achieve the 80% financial inclusion goal by the year 2020. We find ourselves in the year 2020, and the conversations today were very much centered around product-centric design, using data to really create products that meet people at their point of need and not just imagining what people actually need. I started off this conference by saying that the needs of a trader in Anambra might differ from the needs of a trader in Kaduna, and there's also factors such as gender, culture, and exposure that differ the types of products that people need to be financially included. So once again, my name is Lele Balde, and I work with Business Day Media. And without any further ado, please enjoy this closing video. Thank you. Delight was actually started to tell innovative, exciting, and positive food stories out of Lagos, Nigeria.
Being the foremost luxurious goods company in the entire West Africa is a big deal.
Will you have every opportunity? No. But you see, the opportunities you lose on account of your value system, that's your opportunity cost for what you believe, and is the price you must be willing to pay.
Thank you very much, and bless you.
Was actually started to tell innovative, exciting, and positive food stories out of Lagos, Nigeria.
Being the foremost luxurious goods company in the entire West Africa is a big deal. Will you have every opportunity? No.
But you see, the opportunities you lose on account of your value system, that's your opportunity cost for what you believe, and is the price you must be willing to pay.
Thank you very much, and bless you.
Thank you so very much for playing that Business Day video. Please ensure that you subscribe to Business Day. With me here, I have the final report entitled Digital Financial Services in Nigeria. So each participant will get a copy of this sent to their email. And if you want to get a physical copy, you can also do so by speaking to the people at Lagos Business School. Again, I would like to thank our esteemed guests, our esteemed panelists, the organizers, and also our audience joining us from far and beyond for tuning into what has been a very interesting and thought-provoking conference on financial inclusion. At Business Day, we remain committed to telling financial inclusion stories and ensuring that we keep decision makers and stakeholders accountable for the decisions that they make and also for the policies that they put in place. Again, like the SDGs states, it's our goal to leave no one behind, and we hope that with the years that are coming, financial exclusion will be a thing of the past in order for our economies to continue to grow and to continue getting better year by year. So again, my name is Lele Balde, and I work with Business Day. It's been a pleasure being your host for these past 4 hours. Do have a great afternoon, and God bless.